Amazing moment. Cleaning lady's simple bubble trick discovered by watching Millionaire CEO trans. Claire adjusted her uniform, running the vacuum across the plush carpet of the CEO's office, the weight of her long day pressing down on her. The corporate building loomed large, its steel and glass exterior gleaming under the afternoon sun. It was her world, a difficult one to navigate as a single mother cleaning up after men whose lives seemed so much more substantial than hers. Yet, the same hands that wielded a vacuum also nurtured dreams of a better life for her teenage daughter, Lily. "Hard work and integrity, honey," she often told her. "That's how you make a life worth living." Doubt crept in like an unwanted visitor as she picked up the latest cleaning solution, the one that filled her daughter with delight when she turned it into playful bubbles. As she moved quietly about the office, her ears caught snippets of conversation from the nearby conference room. Executives were arguing, a voice raised here, a sigh there. Curiosity burned within her, but she pulled herself back, focusing on her task. The scent of her simple cleaning solution, fresh with a hint of lemon, reminded her why she kept coming back to this place day after day, even when her bank account was empty. But her heart sank when she realized that the economic strain hung over her like a cloud. Could she ever aim for the kind of life those high-powered executives lived? As tension mounted within the room, Claire felt drawn to the vibrancy of the moment. Perhaps it was the childlike spirit ignited by the bubbles that could transform the atmosphere behind those closed doors. With a flick of her wrist, she blew bubbles, their vibrant colors dancing in the stark office light. They drifted, mesmerized, into the conference room. To her shock, the ruffled CEO's expression shifted. Claire watched as he became captivated by the simple, whimsical spectacle before him, his brow furrowing in thought for the first time that afternoon. His mind shifted, creativity igniting, a spark in the pressure cooker of corporate dread. As he began proposing an innovative strategy, Claire trembled with conflicting emotions, fear of being seen, yet a desire to push against the walls of her modest existence. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The news of her bubble trick spread like wildfire, igniting a spark of curiosity in the corporate hierarchy. It made her dizzy as the CEO sought Claire out, his intentions genuine but leaving her with a gnawing anxiety. "Mentorship," he said. "The chance to develop your ideas." But didn't he see her? Didn't he realize that she was just a cleaning lady? Her heart raced. Self-doubt rooted her shoes to the ground. Each encounter with him brought revelations about a buried talent, artistic dreams long resigned to the shadows of her mundane reality. Yet every time she considered taking a leap, questions gnawed at her heart. What if she faltered? What if she failed, not only herself, but her daughter? Could she bear to leave behind the financial security, no matter how tenuous, that her job afforded? As she weighed her aspirations against the cycle of stagnation, fears and desires tangled in a knot that tightened with each day. Standing on the brink of change, her heart throbbed painfully against the weight of history and possibility. Could she really let herself be exposed? The room felt small as the stakes rose. At this moment, Claire stood at a crossroads. The allure of a brighter future warred with the fear of uprooting her and Lily from the familiar. The commotion of progress pounded in her ears, leaving her breathless and wondering. Would she succumb to the comfort of her past, or dare to embrace the unknown? Claire's heart raced as the CEO, Mr. Daniels, continued to speak. His words wrapped around her like a taut string, pulling her closer to the edge of the life she had known. "You have a gift," he asserted, his deep voice resonating with certainty. "Imagine the possibilities if you let yourself explore that. We need fresh perspectives in this industry. Someone grounded yet capable of thinking outside the box. Your bubbles, they're not just playful. They symbolize innovation." The compliment was both exhilarating and suffocating. She felt the tether of her reality loosen, yet at the same time, The weight of expectations threatened to pull her back down. Did he really believe in her potential, or was he simply intrigued by the novelty of a cleaning lady disrupting his sterile corporate world? As her cleaning tasks faded into the background, Claire's thoughts spiraled. Was this her moment? The chance to finally step into the light, to claim her abilities? The fear of failure loomed large, nearly drowning the exciting prospect of embarking on a new path. What if she opened that door only to stumble? The fear of disappointing herself and, more importantly, her daughter gnawed at her insides. "I'd like you to join a brainstorming session next week," Mr. Daniels continued, his enthusiasm undeterred. "We'll be discussing strategies for community engagement, and your perspective could be invaluable." He had noticed her, really noticed her. But amidst the thrill, trepidation crept into her veins. Conceptualizing ideas for executives felt like standing naked in front of a crowd, vulnerable and exposed. That night, as Claire settled in bed after helping Lily with her homework, uncertainty invaded her thoughts like unwelcome intruders. She stared at the ceiling, her mind twisting the words of Mr. Daniels, replaying that pivotal moment in his office where her breath turned shallow. While cleaning for a living was honorable, the spark inside her longed for something beyond the confines of her current reality. Could she balance the mundane duties of motherhood with an ambition that could elevate them both? The next morning, Claire grabbed a cup of coffee, its rich aroma awakening her senses. She sat at the kitchen table, a blank piece of paper before her. If her thoughts could be translated into ideas, what would they look like? Fear trickled back in as a tight lump formed in her throat. How could she translate her world into concepts that resonated with power players? Bubbles floated in her mind, transforming into metaphors for connection and creativity. "I have to find a way," she whispered to herself, her resolve crystallizing. That evening she spent her time jotting down ideas, gathering each hesitation and channeling it into something tangible. The pages overflowed with potential, her dreams growing louder than the doubts that had silenced them for too long. With each new thought, Claire felt a sense of empowerment blooming, as if she were reclaiming not just her voice but also her destiny. She could be the architect of her own narrative. The remaining days leading up to the meeting were an intricate dance of preparation. She envisioned her bubble trick, spiraling beyond the whimsical. It was the embodiment of unexpected delight in the business world. It became a metaphor for the creative strategies she could offer. Her ambitious plans flowed like a waterfall, revitalizing her spirit and reaffirming her worth. As she approached the day of the meeting, Claire could not shake the thrilling anticipation weighted with fear. What would the executives think when a cleaning lady presented her ideas? Could she withstand their scrutiny? The day arrived and she donned her best attire, neatly pressed and full of hope. She stood before the mirror, taking a moment to center herself. Claire closed her eyes and breathed deep. "I am more than what others see," she murmured as she opened her eyes, steely determination reflecting back at her. Was she truly ready to face a room full of powerful, judgmental figures? The butterflies in her stomach staged a rebellion as she stepped into the boardroom. The air buzzed with anticipation as she grasped her sheaf of notes tightly. The stakes were high. In that moment of truth, Claire was not just a cleaning lady, she was a vessel of innovation, a voice longing to be heard. As she took a step forward, she realized what lay ahead was not just a presentation. It was her shot at rewriting her story, and this time, she was determined to avoid a happy ending that left her hidden in the background. What would the executives see once the bubbles began to burst, revealing the creativity and potential she intended to unleash? Would they listen? Or would they dismiss her as just another dreamer? With a racing heart, Claire prepared to deliver the ideas that could change everything. The room was filled with reflective glass, polished mahogany, and the faint scent of fresh coffee. Claire felt dwarfed by the expanse of authority looming over her. As she stood before the executives, their faces a mixture of skepticism and intrigue, she could hear the ticking clock spiraling away, each second a testament to the weight of her aspirations. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady, yet a tremor brushed against the edges of her words. "Today I'd like to share an idea inspired by the simplest of pleasures: bubbles. The notion that something so utterly whimsical could serve as a bridge to innovation felt both ludicrous and liberating. The silence in the room pulsed with tension. She could see Mr. Daniels perched on the edge of his seat, captivated yet critical. How could she turn the playful nature of bubbles into a corporate strategy? The thought clawed at her, but she pressed on, her notes trembling in her grasp. Bubbles represent connection, she elaborated, the words spilling forth as if emboldened by her initial faltering. They are fragile yet captivating, drawing attention in a way that commands joy. In the world we operate, we need to foster connection. Our campaigns could transform to be less formulaic and more expressive, inviting our audience to engage, not just as consumers, but as participants. Unbeknownst to her, every time she mentioned connection, the barriers in the faces around her cracked ever so slightly. Claire continued weaving her ideas, a strategy of community engagement that bore the lightness of her imagination yet carried the weight of sincerity. Consider outreach programs that partner with local artists, enabling them to express their vision through our brand. Each idea ignited in her mind like the fireworks of celebration during a pivotal moment. Not just as sponsors, but as collaborators. We could host workshops, encourage inventive local projects, and allow the community to have a say. Interesting perspective, interrupted a sharp voice from the side, a senior vice president with painted-on condescension. But how can a gimmick like bubbles resonate in a market that thrives on ROI and measurable metrics? Isn't it a stretch? The challenge slammed into her with the force of a tidal wave. This was the moment of truth. Claire could feel the tide of doubt rolling in, but she couldn't retreat. Instead, she squared her shoulders, reassuring herself of her grounding. Every innovation starts with a dream that seems implausible, she countered, her tone stronger. Shouldn't we ask ourselves what might resonate rather than dismiss it outright? What if our ideas were an invitation to be seen, to be a part of something greater? The room paused, the air thickening with unarticulated thoughts. A flicker of recognition crossed Mr. Daniels's eyes, lingering perhaps on the authenticity she exuded. In that instant, Claire realized that pushing against the walls of perception would demand vulnerability. Her roots as a cleaning lady were intricately tied to her ability to see beyond the surface, to notice the small details that could be expanded into meaningful dialogues. Imagine this, a pop-up event where people create their own designs encapsulating their thoughts in bubbles. Her voice soared, fueled by the adrenaline racing through her veins. A tangible product, launched not by us, but by our community. It's about shared ownership. As she concluded her presentation, a gust of exhilaration mixed with trepidation surged through her. The executives leaned in closer, whispers crackling through the air, each huddle generating a contrast of anticipation. Had her cookies crumbled, or were they warming to the scent of her voice? Then came a sudden weighty silence. Did she dare hope? Claire glanced at Mr. Daniels, who appeared deep in thought, a thoughtful hint of a smile teasing at his lips. Very compelling, Claire, he summarized, and she felt a spark igniting within her. Let's explore ways to bring this to fruition. A meeting to dive deeper? Her heart swelled, a wave of relief crashing over her. But right beneath it lurked a creeping doubt. Could she continue this momentum? As the conversations initiated around her, Claire realized this was far from over. The journey ahead would stretch her capabilities and lay bare her vulnerabilities. Would she continue standing at the edge or fold under pressure? In the swirl of excitement, she felt a curiosity build within. What deeper layers lay beneath the company's culture, and how could she navigate through any resistance that might arise? The boardroom transformed into a realm of possibilities, and she stood at the center, no longer a mere cleaning lady, but a pivotal player in the narrative unfolding before her. Yet, Claire felt a subtle fear lurking. Amidst moving forward, would she find a space to remain true to herself? Or would ambition alter her path in unforeseen ways? With every heartbeat echoing the newfound hope, Claire prepared to confront the challenges she sensed waiting in the shadows. What would they demand of her next? As the door swung shut behind her, she resolved to find clarity amidst the chaos. Her journey had only just begun. The weight of expectation pressed heavily upon Claire as she exited the meeting room. The flickering hope ignited in her chest felt simultaneously intoxicating and terrifying. Had she truly found a path that could lead her to a place of legitimacy, or was she merely a temporary novelty in a sea of corporate uniformity? The duality of her ambition and her lingering insecurity spiraled through her thoughts, and she wrestled with them, unable to shake off that nagging uncertainty. Before heading back to her desk, she took a moment to gather herself in the hall, lined with art that seemed to echo the need for daring creativity she had just championed. Each frame and brushstroke whispered reminders of the beauty and vulnerability. Would her conviction stand firm as scrutiny sharpened its gaze? Determined not to let doubt choke her clarity, Claire concentrated on her next steps. What could she do now to build upon the momentum? She needed to probe the company further, not just into the executives' minds, but into their hearts, striving to deepen her understanding of their culture. Perhaps a frank dialogue with her colleagues could unveil opportunities she hadn't yet recognized. Returning to her workspace, Claire found herself surrounded by the reassuring familiarity of her desk. The close proximity of her messy notepad, the gentle hum of her computer, and the comforting scent of her coffee. She needed to craft a strategy, one that evolved her concept from whimsical musings to actionable plans. Pulling out her notebook, she began sketching ideas. Focus groups could offer invaluable insights. The animated chatter of early morning meetings would become her map, guiding her understanding of the desires and resistances within her peers. She envisioned a brainstorming session, where associates from various departments could contribute their thoughts, creating a canvas upon which this initiative could flourish. As she drafted the meeting proposal, Claire felt the flicker of excitement returning. How could they frame bubbles in a way that resonated with their objectives without appearing frivolous? She scribbled ideas furiously, analyzing ways to entwine creativity with strategy. But an unsettling thought crept in. She recalled the reaction of the skeptical vice president. Was she deluding herself into thinking she could not only win them over, but genuinely transform their way of thinking? The fear that colored her vision began to paint shadows across her conviction, but Claire refused to falter. This was a chance to redefine her career, her identity, even her legacy. Looking at the proposal again, an idea struck her. What if she organized a workshop herself? An interactive session where participants could share their perceptions of the company, blending personal narratives with her bubble metaphor. This approach could challenge the executive's assumptions while simultaneously cultivating a sense of unity among peers. It demanded introspection and open-mindedness. Claire felt the thrill of her own courage rising. But then, the memory of her past weighed against her. A cleaning lady once confined to the periphery. Who was she to instigate such a radical change? It struck her that this very experience made her perfectly suited to lead such an effort. Throughout her life, she had learned to observe, to empathize, to see beyond the surface. Those skills equipped her well for this moment. With renewed determination, she began drafting a new proposal for a workshop, tapping into her unique journey and insights. She acknowledged the risk, confronting the corporate culture and exposing the friction between its layers. But if she was going to follow this thread of innovation, she had to dial up her resolve, deepen her vulnerability, and let her aspirations take flight. As she sealed her proposals and prepared to distribute them, Claire felt the unexpected rush of making her own declaration of purpose. She was ascending from the uncertainties of her background, redefining what she could bring to this realm. Yet, as her heart soared with new possibilities, a pang of apprehension snaked through her. Would they truly embrace her vision, or would they bolster established hierarchies that stifled creativity? The prospect of the upcoming workshop loomed before her. In her pursuit of climbing this corporate ladder, could she withstand any pushback? With each pulse of her heartbeat echoing the blend of eagerness and dread, Claire embraced her resolve to transform that exhilaration into tangible results. She understood the stakes now more than ever. Showing her true self would require not just creativity, but a willingness to confront the tensions of her new role alongside the forces that sought to resist. What challenges would the upcoming workshop reveal? Would her voice be heard, or would it drown in the relentless tide of indifference? With her proposals dispatched, Claire took a deep breath, feeling the weight of purpose anchor her spirit. The workshop was just days away, and as she glanced at her calendar, the realization struck her. This was not just a task, it was a crossroads in her career. Yet doubt still lingered, a shadowy reminder of her past, threatening to whisper insecurities into her core. Caught in a web of anticipation, she decided to use the upcoming days for personal reflection. Going beyond mere logistics, she needed to confront the remnants of her old self, the doubts that still haunted her from those years spent in cleaning uniforms, observing the daily bustle of corporate life from the fringes. What could she learn from that past observation? How could she channel that into a compelling narrative for the workshop? Each morning brought a ritual. Coffee in hand, she settled into a corner cafe that over time had grown familiar. She jotted down her thoughts, each blend of words attempting to capture the essence of her journey. From cleaning bathrooms to presenting ideas, the leap felt both monumental and fragile. What had given her the strength to dream beyond her early reality? With each sip, clarity began to unfold. She recalled the conversations overheard while dusting desks, the laughter, the frustrations, the dreams of her colleagues. Each moment had been etched into her mind, forming an invisible tapestry of aspirations and fears that bound the entire workplace. Those experiences, highs and lows, could inform her workshop. Taking this new understanding, she carefully crafted an introductory narrative to share with her co-workers, one steeped in vulnerability. Claire aimed to weave her story into the fabric of the workshop, allowing others to see the power of personal experiences. She felt a spark. Her past was an asset, not an albatross around her neck. The night before the workshop, she struggled to sleep, her mind a whirlwind of scenarios. What if they laughed at her bubble theory, or dismissed her altogether? The internal battle roared. The thread of doubt twisted into her anticipation. Yet she recognized this turning point had the potential to carve out a different future for her and her colleagues. Arriving at the conference room the next morning, she took a moment to absorb the sight of her colleagues gathered, uncertain, yet hopeful. As she sat up, she caught snippets of conversation fluttering through the air, dismissing her initiative entirely, lingering skepticism mingling with whispered curiosity. It was a vivid reminder that not everyone would be on board. She had to earn their engagement. She started her session with a simple tale. Once I was the voice that went unheard, a cleaning lady working to make my world cleaner, not knowing I longed for innovation. The room fell silent, the tension palpable. Claire then unveiled her bubble metaphor, using humor and insight to illustrate the barriers to creativity. As she spoke, her voice transformed from tentative to assured, pulling her audience into the rhythm of her narrative. Yet, just as she saw the initial hesitancy fade from their expressions, the doors swung open and the vice president walked in, his demeanor unchanged. The air thickened as participants shifted, clearly taken aback. Would this be the moment that tipped the scale? His presence could either bolster her idea or serve as a precipice of doubt. The stakes were suddenly elevated. Claire understood that more than just her colleagues were watching. The very culture of the company lay in the balance. Did she have the strength to push past any resistance her supervisor might pose? What if his skepticism silenced her voice altogether? As she took a deep breath, glancing around the room to gauge their reactions, she aimed to confront the challenge head-on. There was no retreat. Her professional transformation hinged on this moment. Would she leverage that tension, or would it undo her greatest ambition? The atmosphere crackled with uncertainty, and Claire fortified her resolve as she prepared to confront both the vice president and her own insecurities in one powerful exchange. Could she seize the opportunity to lead this transformative moment, or would doubt sweep through her like a tide of defeat? The breath Claire took now felt heavier, charged with the kind of anticipation that can either propel one forward or lead to catastrophic missteps. The vice president's entrance had shifted the dynamics of the room entirely. His presence loomed like a storm cloud overhead, overshadowing her bubbling enthusiasm. She tightened her grip on her notes, each swirl of ink a reminder of her purpose. An analytical turn of her mind dispelled some of the tension. Why had she hesitated? Wasn't this the moment she'd prepared for? Claire sensed an opportunity, a chance to confront not only the skepticism in front of her but also the inbuilt fears lurking within. Could she turn this uncertainty into a conversation rather than a confrontation? "Thank you for joining us," she said, shifting her gaze to the vice president whose expression remained unreadable. "Today, we're exploring how creativity thrives in environments that empower authentic voices, and how I believe we can move beyond obstacles, like bubbles, if you will." As she articulated her bubble metaphor, she strategically layered in anecdotes that connected to her past, the moments in the corporate world that had felt real to her, but had lacked action. She talked of ideas exchanged in hushed tones over dusty desks, the barriers she'd witnessed formed not by lack of talent, but by unexamined biases. Claire could see the initial skepticism give way to intrigue, even among those who had muttered doubts just moments before. An incisive moment arose. Her narrative pivoted to challenge the room's perceptions. "The stories I've shared today are not just mine. They reflect the struggles many face in our company. Are we not all sometimes trapped in our own bubbles?" The provoke echoed in the silence, catching glimpses of the very struggles her colleagues might have faced in their own ascent, subtly mirroring the stagnation she had witnessed during her time cleaning. She focused on the vice president, reading a flicker of curiosity in the lines of his face, a crack in the stoic facade. It became apparent. This was not just a pitch, but an invitation to reconsider how leadership could foster innovation. Whatever he had planned to project, she could counteract with substance and sincerity. As Claire's story unfolded, a new layer of her emerged, one built not only on her past but on the intention to challenge the status quo and reshape the dynamic of her workplace. This was her voice. She had once been on the sidelines, but now she commanded the floor. The room buzzed with a newfound energy. Even the skepticism began to thaw. Claire noticed a supportive nod from a fellow team member, their eyes expressing hope rather than judgment. In that moment, she extended her narrative beyond her personal journey, transforming it into a collective challenge that belonged to everyone present. Would they consider her reflections as stepping stones towards a more inclusive, creative culture? Claire knew she could no longer rely solely on the weight of her title. She needed them to embrace the vision, to integrate their potentials into a shared goal. Rising tension danced amid the room, creating self-reflective pauses among colleagues who had been skeptical. Claire pressed forward, thickening the plot of her narrative. "Let's discuss barriers together. What defines our bubbles? What insights can we unravel?" Just as she reached her crescendo, the vice president raised a hand, interrupting her mid-sentence. The air thickened with anticipation. She couldn't discern whether he would echo the skepticism that dampened the room earlier, or whether he had come to collaborate. Could Claire persuade him to advocate her vision, embracing change instead of resisting it? The moment lingered, the juxtaposition of hope and hesitation creating swirling currents of energy. The room now a crucible for transformation, where her fate hung on the edge of his next words. Claire held her breath, a mix of hope and anxiety swirling within her. The vice president, a seasoned figure known for his sharp critiques, lowered his hand slowly, his gaze scanning the room before settling back on her. She could see the gears turning in his mind. Doubt had mingled with curiosity. Just then he leaned forward, his voice measured yet commanding. "I appreciate your perspective, Claire," he said. "But you must understand, changing entrenched habits isn't simply about voicing experiences. It requires a plan, a measurable impact." A chill wormed its way into her thoughts. This was the challenge she had anticipated, yet inwardly she questioned whether she had fortified her narrative with enough data-driven conclusions or tactical solutions. Realizing she had to build on this, she responded more pointedly, tightening her resolve. "Absolutely, and I have some ideas for that," she replied, tapping her notes to regain focus. "What if we foster smaller cross-departmental teams aimed at promoting inclusivity? These teams could serve as incubators for innovation, allowing a spectrum of voices to contribute." The room buzzed with murmurs, irritation threading through the concerned faces. A coworker voiced what many were likely thinking. "But we're busy as it is. How would we implement new initiatives alongside our current workloads?" Claire felt a wave of frustration. This was the very mindset she aimed to challenge. the fear of change. I understand the concern about being overwhelmed. Yet consider this. What if these new processes actually streamline our workloads and allow more creativity? We've all felt the burden of redundant procedures. Refreshing how we approach our work could unlock the potential we've been sitting on. In that moment, she realized how much her own voice now bore weight. This wasn't just a defend and retreat scenario. It had transformed into a dynamic exchange. Each assertion made weakened a barrier, challenging not only the skeptics in the room, but the doubts she had long held internally. The vice president seemed to absorb her words, licking his lips as if tasting them for the first time before finally saying, "You make valid points, but I need to see a clearer picture of these creative efforts' outcomes." His challenge unfurled like a map, displaying the terrain she had to navigate to reach her goal. Claire took a breath, her mind racing with possibilities. What if she included metrics on employee satisfaction, innovations sparked, and work efficiency? Suddenly an idea struck her, a glimmer of insight revealing her own capabilities. She could harness her emotional connection to foster a sense of community-driven goals, illustrated by previous successes she had encountered. "What if we approached this collectively?" she suggested, her voice gaining strength. "We could set goal-oriented workshops, creating a forum for ideas with tangible follow-ups to assess real-world applications." Enthusiasm flickered in the eyes of her colleagues, a ripple igniting a sense of involvement rather than mere debate. Yet as she spoke, doubt shadowed her mind. What if they collectively decided to resist this change? What if the creeping fear of failure stifled their willingness to act? The vice president leaned back, fingers steepled, allowing the room to sit in a charged silence. Claire could feel the weight of the moment bearing down on her, a stillness that dared her to summon every ounce of courage she had. This was her chance not just to advocate for a vision but to invite an evolution that extended beyond herself. Just then her intern, Ellen, spoke up from the back of the room, a nervous tremor coloring her words. "What if we all volunteered ideas in small groups? Maybe that could help us find the way forward together." Claire's heart raced, realizing Ellen's suggestion could be the key. To act collaboratively, join forces against the inertia of their established routines. She felt a rush of gratitude toward her. Ellen embodied her earlier call to empower authentic voices, and suddenly, the possibility of creating a lively dialogue felt within grasp. Could she harness this fledgling energy, challenge the vice president's lingering skepticism, and transform the room's resolve into actionable strategies? Claire knew the time had come to initiate a collaborative momentum that could redefine their workplace culture. But would they embrace it? The vice president's expression remained inscrutable, yet Claire sensed change hung on the edge of his lips. The air thickened once again, as hope warred with her doubts. What would be his next move? Would he choose to unlock the door to innovation alongside her, or would he close it tightly, preserving the status quo? Claire could feel the tension in the room shift as the vice president paused, the silence lingering like a heavy fog. It felt radical, different, almost intoxicating. No longer was the room a battleground of ideas. It transformed into a crucible where transformation could emerge. But she had to act quickly. "I appreciate that suggestion, Ellen," the vice president finally said, though the slight arch of his brow revealed skepticism. "I think gathering ideas could serve as a distraction from our daily tasks. How do we ensure this remains focused and effective?" A sense of urgency enveloped Claire. She leaned forward, eager to address his concern head-on. What if we tie these brainstorming sessions to our current objectives? Each small group could focus on actionable strategies that align with our quarterly goals. This way, we're not just throwing out ideas, we're recalibrating our approach with purpose. Some colleagues nodded, but others remained rigid, clinging to the familiar. Each flicker of interest was an indication of potential. However, the shadows of doubt still lingered. She needed something stronger to anchor their imaginations. "And maybe we can track outcomes too," she continued, buoyed by the slight shift in energy. "For every idea proposed, we can designate a follow-up period to measure its impact, be it increased productivity or enhanced collaboration. The metrics will speak for themselves." The vice president contemplated her words, a small tightening at the corner of his mouth suggesting he was considering the implications. Claire seized the moment. This isn't just about making changes. It's about fostering a culture where everyone feels their voice counts, where innovation comes naturally from collaboration, she added, her confidence swelling like a tide. When we empower individuals to contribute, we create a workforce that's not just compliant but engaged, excited even. Yet, doubt crept back as she felt exposed under the vice president's penetrating gaze. What if her vision was just a fragile dream, ready to shatter with the force of his rejection? She had always feared the repercussions of failure, questioning whether she had fully earned her place here. But something within her stirred, an appetite for growth and transformation that demanded to be recognized. "Imagine this, Claire," he interjected, his voice low yet predatory. "If this doesn't work, if our productivity dips or morale worsens, who takes responsibility? You sound passionate, but passion without results is just noise." This stark challenge pulled her outward focus into a tight circle of self-reflection. What did she have to lose, really? The excess cautiousness had kept her paralyzed for too long. She took a breath, armed with newfound clarity. "I'm ready to take that risk," she replied firmly, each word carrying the weight of her resolve. "We can pilot this with one team first, assess its effectiveness, and decide whether to roll it out further. Let's make this a trial rather than a whole-scale change until we've validated our approach." Again, the room stirred with whispers at this new proposition, debates igniting between excitement and trepidation. Claire could harness that energy, challenge the inertia binding her colleagues. But did her vision align with the vice president's strategic goals? He scrutinized her, brow slightly furrowed, fingers still steepled. "A pilot program is manageable," he conceded slowly, "but it must yield tangible results. Cost savings, increased engagement, something measurable." "Absolutely," Claire asserted, feeling emboldened. "Let's quantify everything from participation rates to the impact on workflow." An unfamiliar sense of empowerment surged within her as she spoke. The lingering hesitation was morphing into determination, and she caught a glimmer of surprise in some colleagues' expressions, their support teetering. With the vice president's attention sparked, Claire sensed new possibilities dawning, and she wrestled with the realization that the real challenge awaited her beyond this initial proposal. Would she truly be ready to handle the accountability that came with leading this change? As the tension in the room shifted toward tentative agreement around this new idea, Claire felt the weight of anticipation swell again, mingling with her fear of what lay ahead. Could she maintain this momentum, inspire her team, and withstand the scrutiny that was sure to follow? Just as the air bristled with possibility, Ellen, with an eagerness that radiated from her, piped up. "And if we document the process, we can create a playbook." The suggestion perched on the edge of Claire's resolve, a soft challenge to prove her worth not just to the company but to herself. But right then, she caught the vice president's ambiguous look, a shift back toward guarded wariness. Could one idea initiate a transformational journey, or was it merely setting the stage for inevitable failure? As she pieced together the roadmap ahead, Claire knew that overcoming the fear of what lay beyond this meeting would be her greatest test yet. Claire left the conference room, her heart pounding as the weight of the discussion sank in. The ambiguity of the vice president's acceptance, mixed with the slivers of camaraderie from her colleagues, both exhilarated and terrified her. What had begun as a simple idea had morphed into a potential turning point, not just for her project, but for her entire career. As she walked down the fluorescent-lit hallway, memories of past failures resurfaced. She recalled the times she hesitated to voice her ideas, the dismissive whispers she convinced herself were directed at her. But confronting the vice president had felt different. It was as if she had tasted a fragment of freedom, releasing a flood of pent-up creativity that had lingered on the periphery for far too long. She entered her office and closed the door behind her, establishing a barrier against the chaos outside. The few minutes of silence felt like a new beginning. Her desk was littered with paperwork and old notebooks filled with hastily scribbled ideas, remnants of her earlier attempts to ignite innovation. Now, it was time to sort through them with newfound clarity. Claire gathered the notebooks, quickly flipping through pages. Ideas that once seemed trivial now glimmered like fragments of gold. She pulled out one she had written months ago. A diversity project aimed at enhancing creativity by including voices from various backgrounds in brainstorming sessions. Perhaps this was her key to solidifying her proposed pilot program. She sat at her desk, letting each thought flow freely. Could these sessions not just be about productivity, but about understanding her colleagues on a deeper level? The more she delineated her ideas, the more excitement pulsed through her veins. She could integrate the diversity project into her pilot, creating a multi-layered approach that served both innovation and inclusivity. However, ongoing flashes of doubt broke through her enthusiasm. Would this convoluted approach confuse her team? Could she handle the backlash if her ideas were met with resistance? This wasn't just a proposal anymore. This was about fundamentally changing her work environment, altering core dynamics she had grown accustomed to. Recognizing her spiraling thoughts, she grabbed her notepad and wrote down her apprehensions. Risks were inherent in any change, especially in a calculated workplace like hers. But she reminded herself of her promise to the vice president, the accountability she was ready to shoulder. Visibly staking her claim on the potential for a bolder future meant grappling with both excitement and fear. Just as she began to feel a sense of progress, her phone buzzed. It was Ellen cheerfully inviting her to brainstorm again. A smile crept onto Claire's face. This was the support she needed. Together, they could sculpt a robust framework for their new initiative. But would Ellen be up for the challenge of pushing against the tide like Claire? With a deep breath, Claire texted back, proposing they meet to refine the pilot program and explore her new ideas. She knew this partnership could enhance her own confidence. A shared commitment could deflect the weight of scrutiny she feared. As she prepared for their meeting, Claire found herself teetering on the edge of anticipation and anxiety. Could this initiative not only prove her worth to the vice president, but also ignite a shift in her professional identity? The echoes of self-doubt dared her to retreat, yet she stood firm in her resolve. Suddenly a thought jolted through her. What if she were to gather feedback from the whole team before officially pitching her ideas again? Transparency and collaboration would assure her colleagues of their shared stake in the project. This could lay a robust foundation for a movement rather than a solitary idea, with the potential to generate broader impact. Deciding to set this in motion, Claire's determination became her cornerstone. Yet she was left wondering, how would the team react to her vulnerabilities, her genuine desire for their input? With every step toward radical change came the gnawing fear of being exposed. As she left her office to meet Ellen, the question loomed large over her ambitions. Would her call for transparency invigorate her colleagues, or would it send them fleeing back to their comfort zones? Claire needed to brace herself for whatever was to come. Claire woke early the next morning, anticipation surging through her veins like a rush of adrenaline. Today was different. Today, she would initiate a transformational meeting, one that was not merely a checkbox on a corporate agenda, but a genuine call for collaboration. As the sun cast warm rays through her kitchen window, she brewed coffee, contemplating her aspirations. No longer was she just a cleaning lady, she was a catalyst for change and innovation. Her past experiences had forged her into a dynamic thinker. She had faced disbelief, doubt, and condescension, but she was ready to shatter those barriers with the power of inclusion and creativity. The day progressed with exhilarating speed. As she entered the conference room, she could discern a mix of skepticism and curiosity in the eyes of her colleagues. Steeling herself, she set her notes on the table and shared her vision, presenting the idea of small brainstorming groups that not only connected employees across departments, but also threaded diversity into the fabric of their discussions. The goal is simple, Claire began, her voice steady. To harness the backgrounds and talents of everyone, bringing forth fresh ideas that might otherwise stay hidden. Her heart raced as she observed them, waiting for reactions. I think it's a bit ambitious, don't you think? A voice chimed in. It was the vice president again, probing, testing. But unlike before, Claire felt grounded. Ambition is how we grow. If we don't push boundaries, we risk stagnation, she replied confidently, reflecting on her own journey from confinement to courage. We've all seen what happens when new ideas are dismissed before they even take shape. Imagine what we could create together. To her surprise, she began to notice nods of agreement. Conversations started blooming around the room, voices breaking through the initial reluctance. Ideas sparked back and forth, a tangible energy filling the air. Claire listened intently, heart swelling with pride as her vision illuminated their collective potential. At that moment, she felt a genuine transformation within herself, a recognition not just from her peers, but a profound acceptance of her own worth. Later in the week, Claire arranged the first brainstorming session. Together with Ellen and other allies from the team, they had set the wheels in motion, channeling their energy into creating a space where ideas could converge authentically. Claire looked around at the faces illuminated by enthusiasm and expectation, a marked shift in their demeanor since the first proposal. The session kicked off with laughter, curiosity, and collaboration that exceeded her expectations. Each idea shared reverberated with earnestness, instilling hope both for the individuals presenting and for the collective direction of the company. With each discussion, Claire felt her confidence manifest. She was no longer on the sidelines. She was creating a canvas of camaraderie, one palette of vision at a time. As days turned into weeks, the feedback began pouring in. Surveys reflected increased engagement and excitement among colleagues. They thrived in an environment built on authenticity, inspiring ideas sparked by voices from every corner of the organization. By checking in with everyone afterward, Claire established accountability and transparency, reinforcing the shared ownership of their collective success. At a follow-up meeting with executives, Claire confidently summarized the outcomes of the pilot program. Our teams have not only exceeded expectations, but the true measure lies in the newfound approach to creativity. As she delivered her report, she witnessed faces shift, from skepticism to acknowledgement. Even the vice president seemed to lean in, curiosity piqued. She concluded her presentation with a bold note. This is just the beginning. Let's not just unfold stories from the present, but dare to create new narratives that include every voice. The icing on the cake came when Mr. Daniels stood up, issuing a recognition to Claire's leadership in fostering change. What you've achieved here is exceptional, Claire. We see you. It was validation that tangibly reflected her growth. In that moment, Claire felt weightless. She'd not only collaborated, she had conquered. The identity she had once buried, crafted through years of struggle and hope, had now emerged with full force. As she left the boardroom, a smile spread across her face. No longer was she just a cleaning lady. Claire had firmly established herself as a formidable force in the corporate landscape, a beacon of transformation lighting up the path ahead. Now she was poised not just for her own future, but for the shift in culture that could resonate for years to come. Today she owned her achievements, aptly acknowledging how far she had come from her daily routine of cleaning to championing collaboration. Embraced in fulfillment and satisfaction, the memories of self-doubt faded to faint echoes in history. Claire had become a vibrant thread in the fabric of the company, and she realized this triumph would ripple into a legacy far beyond her individual dreams. You need to subscribe now to witness more inspiring stories of transformation. This is the moment to show your support, so we can keep bringing you exclusive emotional narratives that make a difference. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more souls seeking inspiration. Comment your reactions and theories about Claire's incredible journey. It's your chance to engage. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is vital for sustaining transformative storytelling.